My name's Miles Cinnamon. I work with Queensland Memory in the engagement team. So I'm going to be talking for about 15 minutes, and then my colleague Simon Miller is going to wrap it up from there. We're just going to give you a general overview of how we use social media here at the library. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like this. You're sort of a voice in the social media wilderness. And how do you actually get your content out there? And it's quite a tricky thing. It takes a lot of persistence. Sometimes you can spend a lot of time working on a blog post, you put it out there and no one looks at it. So I'm just going to give you some tips that I use. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So you've just got to keep persevering. And these are some of SLQ's engagement platforms, the ones that we work with at the moment anyway, and of course it's always changing. The John Oxley Library blog and the World War I blogs are the two big ones we work with as far as content and describing what sort of content we've got, new collections and things like that. And that ties into Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and Simon is going to talk about Flickr and History Pin. And there's a lot of cross-promotion that goes on in there. So we'll do a post on the John Oxley Library blog. We'll then promote that post through things like Facebook and Twitter, trying to get that audience in to look at it. Now, how do you make your voice heard? It's very, very difficult. And these are some of the tips that I try and follow. Be entertaining. Social media is there. People use social media to be entertained. So try and make your posts as entertaining as possible. Sometimes it's quite hard with particularly dry collections. So you've got to try and find some sort of interest in any collection that you've got. Keep up with current news and trends and anniversaries. We've found that really successful. I've got some examples to show you as well. Market your collections. So always pointing back to the collection, always pointing back to our catalogue, trying to encourage people that we have these wonderful collections here at the library that people should come in and have a look at. Follow the right people on your social media accounts is always very important. Are you following people like your local ABC? You're following your local journalists and things like that. Make sure that they're following you and they see your posts, and hopefully they're retweeting and sharing it on Facebook as well. Using hashtags can be very important as well to target specific audiences, particularly on things like Twitter. And share and support others. So make sure that you're following the right people, you're sharing their posts when you can, and you're giving them shout outs as well on your social media accounts. So sharing the love, basically, sharing the social media love. Now you can be quite creative. This is a good example from State Library of Victoria, who used Star Wars Day, and there's anniversary days, there's world days, there's days for every single topic under the sun. And if you follow our social media accounts, you'll probably see that we often do little postings. So that's some of the creative things that you can actually do on social media. That's from State Library of Victoria. This follows on from Tyler's talk about Google Analytics. Google Analytics is tied to our blogs. It allows us to see what's popular and what's not, of course. And you can see here, we've been doing Google Analytics back until November of 2013. So this just gives you an idea of the most popular stories that have been on the John Oxley Library blog. And stats allow us to understand our audience and know what they're particularly interested in. And some of these actually tie back to anniversaries. You can see down the bottom there, the 60th anniversary of the opening of Australia's first drive-in shopping centre, that's Chermside. That was extremely popular when we released it last year. Sort of that nostalgia can really draw people in. Railways, there was a railway anniversary, I think it was last year or the year before. People were very interested in railways, so that drew in an audience as well. So Google Analytics is particularly useful. So I've got it set on page views, how many page views we've got for that period. Also average time on page, so it lets you know that people actually are looking at our content. So if you get a really low average time on page, you know that you need to go back to the drawing board. And looking for sort of entertaining collection items. This is one of our most popular blog stories. It was published several years ago about a crocodile found in the Logan River in 1905. So it's just that one particular photograph. So just building a story around that. This was published on the John Oxley Library blog and then promoted through social media. And as I said, I think that's our most popular blog story to date. And that's another one that's in the top 10 as well. The prickly pear problem that Simon wrote a few years ago is particularly popular as well. Using social media for things like collection campaigns. So other staff librarians will approach me saying, we've got a gap in our holdings. We'd really like to fill in these gaps. So we can use things like the blog to talk about that particular periodical and then put it out there on social media, and hopefully we get a few nibbles. Certainly the one for the Cane Grower Weekly from Mackay, that was quite popular. It actually got picked up by the Mackay Daily Mercury, who's obviously following us on social media. They actually printed it on their website, and we actually got a phone call from a gentleman who was able to donate 1 or 2 issues, I believe. So that allowed us to fill in some gaps. The other 2 we weren't as successful with, but it did generate a lot of interest, particularly the Queensland Rock magazine had a lot of people remembering back to say, oh yes, I remember that publication. So I said, making your voice heard, use events to your advantage. So there's anniversaries, world days and national days. You can find them on different websites. You just need to know where to look. Investigate the Twitter trends map, and I'll show you that in a second, and use hashtags. So here's some examples here. Focusing on current news events and trends. Last year there was a news story about Castlemaine Perkins possibly closing. Simon jumped on it straight away and did a blog story about it, and capitalised on our collections as well, showing the different pictures of Castlemaine Perkins during the years. Put that out on social media. It did tremendously well because it was in the news, people were interested. You've got things like World AIDS Day. We've got a huge collection from the Queensland AIDS Archives, boxes and boxes of it. So I went through it and had a look at it. It's educational material, posters, T-shirts, condoms, lots of weird and wonderful things. And that was the perfect hook to hang it on. We put out a blog story, and then that was put out on social media as well, just to promote the day, and also to mention we have these collections here at the library. And there's also quirky things as well. People do love quirky stories. So Queensland UFO related periodicals, we've got quite a few going back to the 1950s, and that generated a lot of interest as well. The Trends Map, I don't know if anyone uses this. It is a pay-per-view website it is free up to a point, and then it becomes a pay-per-view website, but it does allow you to see what's trending around the world. And you can zoom in to Australia, or you can zoom in even further. So you can see there's Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And you can see what's trending at the time on Twitter. This allows you to look to see if there's any events that you might want to capitalise on. Certainly one of the big hashtags there is AusPol, Australian politics. So if you're doing promoting a collection that's political in nature, you could use that hashtag, because a lot of people are following hashtags and may look at that. Anniversaries, just some recent examples. Last month, it's the 125th anniversary of the 1893 floods. So we were able to plan ahead of time, which is always good to try and plan ahead. Sometimes we're off and running because we don't realise until the event's on top of us. But if you try and plan ahead, it's always good. So we were able to digitise some of our collections. So there's a floods booklet which contains some sketches that were originally published in the Telegraph back in the day. We were able to digitise that booklet and have it ready, and we put it out on the blog and on social media. It did really, really well. One of the top blog posts for last month anyway. Same for Rockhampton as well, the Great Flood of 1918. I went through the collection. There was very little on OneSearch that's been digitised showing the flooding in 1918. I went through our copy print collection. I found about 5 or 6 images, put them out. The annoying thing is Rockhampton Morning Bulletin actually found them before I had a chance to put the blog story up, which was kind of annoying. So, but that's really good that people are actually finding our content that way. And of course, the response to the apology, we had some digital stories on YouTube. We were able to put that out to cash in on that anniversary that was happening. Hashtags are a great way to curate posts on a topic, particularly if you're using them for exhibitions. If you use a unique hashtag, you can curate your Twitter posts. You can also, and it's also a matter of taking advantage of existing ones as well and targeting a specific audience. So, as I mentioned before, the apology, the 10th anniversary of the apology, that hashtag was being used around that day, and we were able to use that hashtag and try and tap into that audience. You've got other things like events and festivals, so Panieri, NAIDOC Week's another one. We've created our own for an exhibition, Magnificent Makers. No one else is using that hashtag, so it's not going to get flooded with a lot of other posts about different topics. So you can go onto Twitter, you can click onto that hashtag, you can see all the tweets that have been done promoting that exhibition. Okay. Use any excuse to promote your collection. I think there was State of Origin was on a particular day, and it was also Mel Meninga's birthday. We had a digital story of him where he talks about his Australian South Sea Islander heritage. So that was perfect to put out on State of Origin Day, and we used the hashtags as well. And also things like NAIDOC Week, so you can see how we've structured a tweet here. You can also ping other tweeters, so by putting their Twitter handles into posts in the hope that they may retweet you. This is an example from a few years ago. This is the Brisbane Echo, of course. We were tweeting out some of our collection items that we had in the collection. We actually put their handle in so that they actually would get notification, and they actually ended up retweeting us, which is good because they had quite a large following at that time, 5,000 followers. They've got even more now. Engaging with your audience. This is an example from a few years ago which led to a lengthy discussion on Facebook. It was World Teachers' Day, and I thought, oh, this is a really unusual photograph. The flag is upside down. So I put it out there, and it led to a very long debate about why the flag was upside down, and people were saying to me it's a universal sign for distress. I actually went and contacted the Hebel State School, and I got in touch with the principal, and he was going to get back to me, but he never did, sadly. So if anyone ever finds out why the flag was upside down in 1920 at Hebel State School, it'd be nice to know. But that did have quite a good discussion on Facebook, so people were sharing their ideas of why they thought that the flag was upside down. How am I going for time?
Well, your 15 minutes is up.
Is it? Right, I better stop. I've got far too many slides. I'll just take it through for Simon's. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. I'm Simon Miller. I'm a library technician in the collection engagement team, and I'm going to talk about getting particularly images out into the world and getting people to look at the images that we have in our collection, and through Flickr Commons and History Pen. Button. Okay, looking at Flickr first. Flickr's a website and an image sharing website. That's their claim. They're the best online photo management and sharing application in the world. I can't endorse or I don't know, but they're certainly very popular. There's thousands and thousands of people around the world using Flickr for sharing their own personal photographs. But there's one subset of Flickr which is the Commons. This is a subset of Flickr that was set up specifically for collecting institutions to be able to share historical photographs. And the Commons has been around for about 10 years, and State Library's been part of the Commons since nearly the beginning. So there's more, so you can find more information about it. One of the important restrictions, if you like, of being on the commons is that anything posted on there has to have no known copyright restrictions. So material that we put on the commons is available for anyone to use and share because it's public domain material. It's out of copyright. So that kind of restricts what we're able to use Flickr Commons for. We can't put contemporary material up there, but we've got a lot of historical material, and it's a great way to share that material in particular. Just looking at some of the features, it's got quite a good statistics area, so we can see how many people have viewed our images on Flickr. You can see the two peaks in the graph at the bottom there are when we put up new sets of photographs and obviously publicise those so that generates more traffic on the site. It also shows us what our most popular photographs have been in the 10 years we've been on there. As you can see, the bathing beauties are particularly popular, as are animals and children. So it's perhaps something to bear in mind. If you want popularity, go with those sort of images. All right, so the basic unit of collection, if you like, on Flickr is the album. So we put up sets of photographs around a particular theme. Some of the ones we've done in the past are things like moustaches, because we've got lots of fabulous images of gentlemen with fabulous moustaches. We've done fashion of the 30s, 40s and 50s. Goats of Queensland is very popular. This is the latest one I put up. Our team's only had responsibility for Flickr for just over a month. So this set of images to do with electricity in early Queensland is connected to the Magnificent Makers exhibition that we're currently running. The portrait you can see there is Barton, who was an early electricity pioneer, who's one of the chaps that features in the Magnificent Makers exhibition, and there are images in there of early buildings and the equipment associated with his company. And some of those images also link back to blog stories we've written about Barton and other things to do with electricity. Just an example here of the sort of information that we include when we put a photograph on Flickr. There's a title field, which is generally the same title that's in our catalogue record. The description area is where we can put any other information, time, place, and we also include in there a link back to that photograph in our State Library collection. So people can go from Flickr and come back into the State Library native, into our catalogue and perhaps look for further photographs there if they're interested. So there's the album that the photograph sends. Photographs can be in multiple albums. Sometimes they might be in 2 or 3 if that photograph is relevant to different subject areas. And the tags are important because it's in a way that people can search for photographs. The tags there that are unshaded are ones that are generated automatically by Flickr. So it's got a software that looks at the photograph and guesses what is in there. So sometimes they're useful and sometimes they're not. And then we add other tags, more specific tags, things that people might be looking for. So that's just a general overview of Flickr and what we're doing there. And I'll go on and talk a bit about History Pen, which is another website. It hasn't got such a big audience as Flickr, but it's got other features, particularly being able to tie images to locations through Google Maps. So there's State Library's homepage on History Pen. So when you set it up, you just put information about the institution, and also with links back to State Library, to our own website. So you can pin, obviously, photographs on there, but also video, sound recordings, and documents or text, which has been particularly useful for some of our World War I stuff that we've put on there. You can see there's some documents that are on there as well as photographs. So mostly the pins are put into collections, so it's similar to the albums on Flickr. We have collections on History Pen, so they're based around subjects or around places and so on. And you can use your own photographs, but History Pen also allows you to gather other people's pins into a collection, or you can invite other people to contribute, which is what we've done with some of our World War I stuff, particularly around Anzac Day. So we pinned photographs that we had of recent Anzac Day ceremonies, but then invited other people to pin their own photographs. Alternative to a collection, you can actually set up a tour, which is a more specific. It has a particular order to it. So I built 3 tours for the Queensland Railway's 150th anniversary. So there are tours of the Queensland Railway lines using photographs of stations, so you can actually tour the railway line in the order that the stations appear on the line. So I divided that into 3 sections, south, central and north. So they were quite popular during the anniversary, and people can actually get an idea of where those railway lines go and what's there. The QAnzac 100 was a specific collaboration between State Library and History Pen. So it's part of a broader World War I anniversary collection through History Pen. So it's actually a collection of collections. So under the QAnzac 100, there are a whole lot of smaller collections, some of them looking at contemporary things like Anzac Day, and others looking at specific campaigns or areas, or the home front. I put together a set about Egypt, as Australian soldiers in Egypt, using images from our collection. So that's been an important part of the QAnzac 100 campaign, and it's so it's a lot of people have contributed to that. Not just State Library, but other institutions have also contributed to the QAnzac 100 material. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, just a rough idea if you don't know how it works. This is a set that I put together when Ford announced they were ceasing production in Australia. So I found pictures of Ford Falcons around Queensland. So you upload the image, and then it's located to a particular point using Google Maps. So you can, and then whoever's browsing the site can either go click on the picture and it'll show you where the picture was taken, or you can go via the map and find the pictures that are associated with different places on the map. Yep, so we're nearly done. This is one of the sort of fun features of History Pen. If you've got an image that you can locate exactly and that also lines up with Google Street View, you can overlay your historical photograph with the current Google Street View, and then you can fade that image in or out so people can see how it's changed over time. This is an image of the opening of the Albion overpass in Brisbane with a Ford Falcon there, and overlaid with a current picture of the Albion overpass. So that's a fun feature, and if you've got an image that's in the right place and then you can put it in the right context, you can do that as well. So that's me done. I don't know if you've got